Okay, I've said it before, tipping culture in America is absolutely insane. They ask for a tip at the sandwich shop when you go get a sandwich. They ask for a tip in a restaurant, valid, I think. Tips when you get a coffee. Buying a $5 coffee, I have to tip. What the hell is that? It seems like it's just become very more prominent since they started putting the POS systems, like the little screens in everywhere that you check out. Now it just has a tip button here in the US. And I know that Europe's tipping culture is slightly changing, at least from what I've heard. A little bit more tips are coming here and there, but in a lot of areas, tipping is just not a thing. So today we're checking out Honest Guide's video on tip 27%. Do you want to add more? Question mark. I did. Not too sure where the context is there, but they do fantastic work. If you guys haven't checked out Honest Guide, absolutely love their videos. We're going to pull this one open right now and see what's going on with tipping culture in Europe, specifically Prague, I think, is where he lives. So hit the like button and let's check it out.
Is tipping a scam? Well, it can be, and I'll give you 2 examples where I believe I was scammed while tipping. You can be the judge.
Scammed while tipping? Oh, I know what he's talking about. He's talking about the gratuity. It's got to be the gratuity. I don't know if you guys have that over in like European countries. If you go into a restaurant with, usually it's 8 or more people, they will automatically put like an 18% or a 20% tip on the receipt. And then you have to notice where it's at or you could tip more. I'm assuming that's what he did. Let's find out.
Or in New York, I had a few drinks and it came time to pay. And they placed the card reader in front of me. And in US, you usually get these ridiculous numbers that prompt you to give a tip. Usually it's like 20, 25, even 30%.
100%?
So to my shock, they placed the terminal in front of me and it said, do you want to tip 7, 5, or 3%? I was like, wow, that's really nice of you. And since it was a bar where I...
Notice how it had the plus sign there, plus 7%. Oh, dude, that sucks. It's happened to me too before in a restaurant where I didn't realize that I double tipped.
Enter because it was a comedy club. I was like, well, I guess they already got the money for the entrance and the beer is kind of expensive for $12. So they don't require a tip, which was kind of nice. So I was like, well, let me tip you 7% because you're being fair to me. And then I looked at the total I just paid. I was like, wait, if a beer is $12, I had 4, and my total is $63, $64, that doesn't add up. And it didn't. These guys have already added tip to my total, and a pretty generous tip of 27%. And on top of that, they were asking for additional tip of 7%, which seemed nice. So in total, they charged me 33% tip. And also I paid the entrance and so on, you know, and crazy price for a beer. By the way, I was so upset I actually left a review for this comedy club. And I said, the comedy was good, but what kind of comedy you played on me? This is ridiculous. And they replied in the standard way like, hey, look, you're a tourist. You don't understand how it works in Manhattan. Beers are expensive. And
no, that's crazy. Adding tip 18%, asking for a tip when you pay is straight up ridiculous. He's really right. And kudos to him for actually leaving just like a 3-star. Most people I know, it's either 1-star or 5-star. He was like, hey, the comedy was good. He actually gave like a 3-star. That seems very valid. It shows me that he's a good person. He's not just going straight doing a 1-star. Most people just get upset. They just put a 1-star on something. If they're just mad about the service in a restaurant, it's like, hey, maybe the server was having a bad day or something bad was going on. Like the owners of the restaurant could very well be good people. You just gave them a 1-star, maybe a 3 or even a 2 might have been valid. But yeah, all right. That sucks that this happened to him.
we tip 33%.
Of course, in New York.
Bullshit. I know a bar just 2 streets off where your bar is, and it's like $4 a beer. And I tip $1 a drink. And actually, it's even cheaper. I'm not going to tell you where it is. I'm going to keep that silent. Was I scammed? I was tricked, to say the least, on a silly tip trick. And you can actually be too here in Prague on a different example I'll give you.
Cool. I'm curious to see what this is.
So you're paying, and the waiter will bring back a bunch of coins. And let's say you're from US, where the largest coin you have, I know you have a dollar coin, but you don't use it, is a quarter, right? So if you get a bunch of quarters, it's like, oh yeah, he just left $2 on the table, so I'll just let him keep it. But in this case, the waiter left you more than $10 in coins, but you don't know that because you're not familiar with the different currency with the different coins. And it's not the case of this place, just to be clear, but there are places in touristy areas in Europe that will do this exact trick. It goes for euro coins as well. We do have a 2 euro coin, and it's quite often and frequent that you will come across it. So if there's 5 coins, suddenly it's $10. Even Wikipedia got this wrong. When you go to the gratuity page, they show an example of leaving some change on the table for the waiter, but the example they have is actually a 20% tip, which is pretty generous for Europe.
Yeah.
Well, let's go to the very
here.
beginning of tipping. Why did we start to tip in the first place? Well, it was because someone provided an additional service on top of what she or he was supposed to do, what we were expecting. So they did something extra. Well, here's a little extra for you. So where's the problem with tipping? Well, it starts in the United States of America.
Of course, everything that gets out of control starts with us.
If you have been to the United States or if you live there, you probably are aware of the fact that when it comes time to pay, you'll be asked to leave a generous tip, no matter what the service really was. You will be prompted to tip 20 or more %. And if you're a first-time visitor to the US, this may come to you as a shock, but Americans are used to it. Mainly, not only used to it, but fine with it, because they know the person who's serving them in a restaurant works below minimum wage.
Kind of want to stop this here. They don't work below minimum wage. They work at a state minimum wage. So they may work below the federal minimum wage, I believe is $7.75, maybe $8 US. I don't know. It's been a long time since I've checked the minimum wage. It hasn't moved. It's the exact same where it was 20 years ago, I'm pretty sure. But yeah, so we have states, and if you work in the service industry in some states, you can work at the state minimum wage rather than the federal minimum wage. It's kind of crazy. It's going to be really low, like $3, $2.
Paying the person, otherwise they'd live out of nothing. And here lies the entire problem of tipping in the United States, because when I said minimum wage, I'm not talking about $10, $15 minimum wage. I'm talking about 2.13 United States
$2.13.
dollars. That is in many states the minimum wage.
Here's me right here, Tennessee, number 48, and they're all the same, $2.13. Yeah, it sucks. I've never worked as a service industry worker here in Tennessee, but I did in California. They have it much better. You make like a $15 minimum wage, and then you make a tip wage off of that. Well, no, if I was looking for like another wage name there. All right, let's keep going.
Industry, $2.13 is lower than the minimum wage in Bulgaria and Romania. And this is not something
crazy.
I'm making up. This is from Department of Labor, a governmental institution in the United States. They have a website where they will say, minimum wage for tipped employees is $2.13. And it is in all these states: Alabama, Georgia, Indiana, Kansas, Kentucky, Louisiana, Mississippi, Nebraska, North Carolina, Oklahoma, South Carolina, Tennessee, Texas, Utah, Virginia, Wyoming, Delaware. Oh, I'm sorry.
Hold on. If you guys don't know, and you're in Europe, what's crazy is that these are all Republican states. And that's fucked up. It's crazy that the Republicans have such a low wage for service industry workers, and then liberal states actually give them a much higher pay. Come on, do better, Republicans.
Wyoming, Delaware. Oh, I'm sorry. Delaware's $2.23. Oh, so that's like, they're fine. In all these states, if you work in a food industry, you make less than I made 20 years ago here in Europe at McDonald's as a kid. That's ridiculous.
Damn. Okay, here we go. Americans'
As
fault.
much as I would love to feel sorry for you, I'm not going to. That is your culture.
He's almost got like a Canadian sorry, like a sorry.
That is your culture. That's how you treat employees. That is your style of living. We have it different in Europe. We pay employees minimum wage, which is higher than your minimum wage. But you live like that. But where the problem begins for us is when this meets. It's either when you travel here or when we travel there. So I was in Washington, D.C., and the waiter said, look, if you don't tip me, I make no money. I was like, wait, dude, but I didn't know this. I was 21 years old. I had very little money, less than he made. And he said, well, you have to tip me 20%. Otherwise, I'm broke. I was like, well, but I didn't know this. Like, I'm at a restaurant looking at a menu and the burger is $10, not $10 plus you have to tip the waiter and maybe the chef too. I don't know.
Yeah, really quick. So a fact that even like normal Americans don't know that don't work in the service industry is that as a server, when you're working, you also have to tip out a bartender and a busboy. So when the waiter said that I will make no money, you go, well, you're still making the $2.13 an hour, right? But what actually happens is you have your total sales for the day. So if you're a server and you have 10 tables for the day and 5 of them tip you and 5 of them don't, it doesn't really matter because your total sales may be $2,000 for the day. You still have to tip out your busser and your bartender 10 to 15% off of your total sales. So a server theoretically could actually lose money on a day of work from people not tipping, which is absolutely wild. Europe does it so much better where you guys just actually give people a livable wage. And if they get tips, it's just extra. You know, they don't have to live off of it, and we don't have to rely on people actually tipping because you'll get people who don't tip and it can totally F up your entire workday.
So where do we draw the line? Which professions we do tip and which we don't tip? I actually asked my American cousin and she said, well, we only tip food-related jobs. Like, oh, okay, so when I go to Walmart to buy food, I tip the cashier. She goes like, no. Oh, okay, so when I fly across the ocean and the flight attendant brings me food, do I tip her? No. Like, okay, so that rule doesn't apply. Is there a different rule? Here's where I tipped in US where you're not supposed to tip. New Jersey is the last state where you cannot pump your own gas and somebody has to do it for you. And it was freezing cold and I watched the guy as he's pumping my gas and I tipped him because I felt bad for him. I was like, well, that's a shitty job and you have to pump my gas. So, here's $1. And I told my family, I'm like, what? You must have been the first person in the world to tip him. I'm like, well, okay. So I thought that the tipping is for something extra, as I said in the beginning, as they say on Wikipedia. But no, it's not extra. They're just doing the job, but you have to pay extra just for that, just for the normal stuff. Now, how do Americans view us Europeans when we tip very little? Well, I've actually experienced it myself.
All right, this is what I'm here for. Because I know our tipping culture, and I don't want to just go on a rant about ours. I'm curious what's going on in Europe.
Large group, and the person who was paying tipped very little, and the waitress ran out, and she said, what went wrong? And we, by the way, tipped 10%. She was like, well, you can't leave such a small tip. You guys were a large group. You have to tip more. So I was kind of doing the translation there. It was awkward for all of us. And then Honza found this. We need to ban Europeans from traveling here until they learn how to act because they only tipped me 10%.
All right, first of all, any like waiter or bartender that's going to throw a fit because somebody left them a 10% tip, they're just being a Karen. That's kind of messed up. I don't know. I had people who didn't tip all the time, and you can usually identify them pretty quickly when they sit down in your section. You just brush it off like, oh, I got a 0 tip. You don't need to like chase people out of the restaurant. That's kind of crazy.
Learn, you Americans, that you need to pay to people who do jobs. Culture differences, man. And once again, let me go back to we pay for something we got extra. That's why we're giving extra. You'd think that tipping is for extraordinary service, right? Well, according to a study that I found, no, it is not. You tip more to women. Men tip more to women. If they look good, they get higher tips. I mean,
waitresses in their 30s and those with large breasts, blonde hair, and or slender bodies received larger average tips. Dude, I'm gonna have to get my wife back to work. We need some more money. That's real though, right? I mean, most of the time men are paying for the bill. So, I mean, it is 2025. A lot of women are kind of paying for more stuff. So when is this dated? 2008, July 2008. Okay, so this might be a little different now, but yeah, usually most men pay. So I would assume that they're tipping the blonde-haired, big boobed broads more tips.
Remember Hooters? I think they just ran out of business. They were based on
Yes.
that. Women, chesty women would serve you and they would get higher tips because they were chesty. Imagine if I would want to work in such industry. I'd be living off $2.13 an hour. Now, believe it or not, and I'm only talking to a small portion of the world now, there are countries where people do not tip. In some countries, only very few,
Asian countries? I'm assuming Asian countries don't. They're like against tipping, aren't they? I don't know.
route to tip, but in many countries, you simply do not tip. Since we have viewers from all around the world, we asked on our Instagram, Real Honest Guide, how much do they tip in their country? What is the custom? And we were pleased or surprised to find out that in many countries, Australia, Singapore, South Korea, Portugal, Finland,
China,
and maybe many
Singapore.
more, you simply do not tip. There may be a tipping jar on the table, you may give
I wanna go to
something if you're
Hawaii.
super happy, but if you don't tip, nobody's gonna run after you on the street. Because you're like, well, if you don't tip me, I won't have money for rent. And now, despite the fact that our followers on Instagram said one thing, maybe a funny map on Reddit will say another thing, you as a viewer may have a third opinion. So please share it in the comments because it will only prove one more thing, and that is there's no rules for tipping, and I believe there shouldn't be. So if you're, let's say, from Australia, and you may say, well, I always tip 10%, and another person will say, well, I've never tipped and I never will, and the third person will say, well, no, we tip 20. Please share it below, because this is one of the videos where we're very much looking forward to the discussion under it.
Do we have a problem?
But let's talk about Prague, Czech Republic, where we tend to be experts on everything, me and Honza the Honest Guys.
Cool.
And what is the tipping culture and the tipping customs here? Because it
looks so
is
beautiful.
being changed by the foreigners coming here. If I'd ask my dad or my mom, how much do you tip? They would say, well, we round up to the closest 10 or to the closest 100 because that's how you do it. Or you don't leave a tip. Why would you leave a tip? Doesn't make any sense. Maybe you'll leave like a small coin on the table, but not 10, 20%, which is now also becoming standard in many places.
That's crazy. I wonder if it's like because so many foreigners come visit like big touristy areas and they're constantly tipping, and then like the industry and the servers that are working in that area are so used to getting tips from tourists that it's kind of like trickle down to the locals maybe, or the locals are getting a little bit of heat because they're not tipping. Is that what's going on?
Here's why. Imagine you're a restaurant owner in Prague and Americans show up and they'll tip you 20%. You'll be like, wow, that's pretty cool. And another couple will show up and again, they'll tip 25. We'll be like, whoa,
yeah, they get
that's
used
really
to
nice.
it.
And then my dad shows up. He'll only round up to the nearest number. You're like, whoa, what's going on here? I just had 2 Americans and they, improved my business. And you'll get used to it and you'll like it. No wonder, it's more money for the same thing. So you'll start to ask for it. So imagine you're a restaurant, coffee, bar owner in Prague and you're getting all these different nationalities visiting. You get an American who will tip 20, 25%. Then the next day, 2 of us will show up and we'll tip 10%. And then somebody from Australia will tip nothing, or somebody from whatever country will tip nothing. And you as an owner will be shocked. You want those customers who tip more. So you'll set it as a rule. You'll start charging tip to everyone. You'll add it to the menu. You'll say, oh, we're going to charge you 10%.
Oh, no.
We'll charge you extra this and then extra that. But then we will show up and we'll be like, wait, but why this is here? Like, we're not used to that. It creates this whole new era of confusion and chaos that has no rules. Everyone will tell and say something different. It's weird.
I hope to God that like these big tourist areas are not doing that, where they're just adding on gratuity because people are so used to it that work there. That would be really messed up. I think we just need to have a no tip is required in every country across the whole world. And if you want a tip, you can go ahead and do it. In a perfect world, that would be great. It's like, why should I have to tip? Honestly, I'm looking forward to coming to Europe. Hey, let me know in the comments. When I come to Europe, should I tip when I go to places, or should I just not do it at all, or like very little, like do change, like round up, like he said. I don't want to like offend people. I don't really know what to do here. I'm a little confused, and I've put some thought into it, which is weird that I've thought about tipping culture in Europe.
Imagine a restaurant where there's food and there's no price at the end, and you'd be like, oh, so it's different like if you're from Australia or if you're from Czech or American, like everyone pays different because we all make different money and we come from different cultures. We've been doing this show for a while, and 10 years ago when we were making a video, we would say something different about tipping. We would probably say, well, mostly we round up, and 10% is pretty generous. But the influence from US and all these terminals that people turn to you at coffee places and suddenly you see the amount, how much you should tip, really left an effect on how much tip we leave. And just to be clear, I am very generous with tips, and I hate the entire tipping culture.
All right, if I have any viewers in the Czech Republic, I just want to apologize on behalf of all Americans if our tourism has caused a new tipping culture in your country or any other country in Europe. I'm sorry, I don't know what to do about it. All right, I'm going to go ahead and cut it off there. If you guys want to watch the rest of the video, check out the Honest Guys channel. You can watch the full thing. I'm going to watch it right now. This was a super interesting topic, and I still feel a little lost. So help me in the comments. I appreciate you guys watching, and I will see you in the next one. Peace.